I'm Brandon Amoroso, and this is the D2Z podcast, building and growing your business from a Gen Z perspective. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to D2Z, a podcast about using the Gen Z mindset to grow your business. I'm Gen Z entrepreneur Brandon Amoroso, founder and CEO of e-com agency Electric Marketing. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by John Erck, co-founder and CEO of Rebuy, an e-commerce omnichannel personalization engine that we use for almost all of the merchants that we work with across the Shopify ecosystem. John, thanks for coming on. Very excited to have you here.
Right on, man. Yeah, super happy to be here. I'm excited about this podcast. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, could you give everybody just a quick sort of background intro to who you are, how you got into e-commerce and entrepreneurship? Just give us the high-level overview of your career path up until this point.
Yeah, totally. I'd be happy to. I've really been an entrepreneur since the earliest days. Really, as I think about it, all the way back to the days of Napster. I was in, come to think of it, I was in grade school, middle school. My older brother, was going to the University of Minnesota at the time. So I suppose I was probably in 9th grade at the time. And I remember at that point we had a 52K, this is going to date me or whatever, but fine. Even though this is Gen Z, they'll laugh at me. Hopefully I can stay hip.
I don't even think I was born when Napster was started.
Oh, that's funny, man. Yeah, so I kind of lived in the outskirts of basically a small town in Minnesota. We had the dial-up internet, so it made this screeching sound. And if you had like a 56K, it was pretty great. There was another connection type that was even slower. But at the University of Minnesota, they had what was called a T1 connection. They had like T1, T2, T3. Anyways, you could get access, if you were on campus at the U of M at the time, you could get access to a fast internet connection. You could download like entire albums in like 5 minutes instead of like 5 hours, literally. And so, I think about probably the first thing I sold was like bootleg copies on, like, you would burn CDs. I would take orders from people and say, I want this song, this song, this song. And then I would get them through my brother at the U, and then I would sell those for $20 in the school hallways. And I don't know, it's kind of, I don't know if I've told that story before, but anyways, so I guess I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I've just always, loved creating new things, and just creating value for people is a really fun thing to be a part of. And so, so I've always been entrepreneurial and grew up in a family that, valued leadership. And I think that's really important if you're going to be an entrepreneur, is to, do your best to be a leader, find opportunities, and just bring the right people together to work together and solve something, solve a problem that can only really be solved by a group of talented people working together. That takes leadership. So I grew up in a family that valued that, and was, we did our best to cultivate that sort of culture, I suppose, in our family. Now, when I think back to it, and then, so I actually started my first real company in the mid 2000s. I was going to the University of Minnesota myself at the time, and I went to the business school there, and I wanted to be running my own company so that the classes I took at the U of M were like ultra relevant to me, that I had something I could apply them to, whether it's accounting, finance, what have you, business strategy. And I actually launched a company with my dad at the time, again, around 2004, 2005. And I was a direct to consumer operator myself. And so he's always been a water chemist. And so he created a better bubble solution for making soap bubbles, big, huge soap bubbles. And people always asked, we played with it growing up, and it was just really fun in parks and stuff like that. People always asked us where they could get it. And so when I went to the U of M, I went to him and I said, hey, we should, create a company. There was always a demand for it. We'd always say we made it ourselves or whatever. And then, so we started making it commercially and then selling it to people through the internet. And it was pretty successful on day one, but not super successful. But it was enough where, put some wind into our sails. We launched on Zencart. And then this was right around when Shopify was getting started, and our website was really ugly on Zencart. And then we relaunched it on Shopify, and Shopify made it easy to launch a beautiful, modern looking website. This is probably around 2007, 8-ish at this point. and that's how I got, that was my first endeavor as an entrepreneur, and that got me exposure to Shopify as well. And I learned a lot through that process, and it even influenced what I'm doing today up until now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you were sort of at the ground stages of Shopify and have gotten to see it grow and evolve over the last 14, 15 years. That's really neat. As you've gone through your entrepreneurial journey, what are some of the things that you look for when you're evaluating opportunity within a marketplace? Because obviously time is sort of precious, and you can only do so many things, and I'm sure you have a lot of ideas. So how do you go about saying, of the 50 ideas I have in my head, this is the one that I'm going to move forward with here?
Yeah, totally. I can answer that question and build on the story that I was sharing to date. So in the early days of that bubble company, there's a couple things that always stuck with me that I learned firsthand. And one was this idea of a differentiated product. So we would sell direct to the consumer through our website. And, we started making some revenue, some money that way, but, we needed and wanted to do more. And so I started calling toy stores. I would cold call toy stores and say, hey, we have an awesome bubble solution for making big bubbles. I think your customers are going to love it. Do you want to stock this on your shelf? You can buy it in cases of 24. And when I first started making these cold phone calls to retail toy stores in my area and all across the country, the general answer was no, we don't need this. It's too expensive. You're trying to pull one over on me. You're selling me regular soap for 10 times what it's worth. You can make, big bubble solution at home. This isn't the product for us. No, thanks. Phone hangs up. And it's like, okay, well, I know that I knew, and I know that I have a great product. I knew that I had a great product, but the customer didn't see it that way. So I was doing all this cold calling and getting shut down basically left and right. And so any entrepreneur, if you have a great product and you're getting shut down, that doesn't mean that you should stop yet. I mean, there comes a point when maybe you should stop doing what you're doing, and work on something new. That's, there's a time and place for that. But I knew I had a great product. And what I learned at the business school at the time, that they were just being really explicit about, is this idea of a differentiating characteristic. And ideally it can be a differentiating characteristic that's hard for others to replicate too. So if the product that you're selling, if you can think about it through that lens, what makes my product different? And is the thing that makes it different hard to replicate? And you can satisfy those goals, if you will, through your product, you've probably got a great product. And so what I did is I realized these people don't think my formula is very special, when in fact it is. So I need to go prove it. And so I set a Guinness World Record for the world's largest soap bubble using our formula to demonstrate to the world that it was, significantly different than what you can make at home, very effective and just awesome. So I went out, I did that, I set that Guinness World Record, and then I called, this toy stores back more or less, and then said, hey, I have a Guinness World Record setting bubble formula. I think your customers are going to love it. There's nothing else like it. Do you want to buy some? And they said, yes, absolutely. We'd love to buy some. So I think when you're, I'm doing my best to be helpful to others out there building. If you can think about having a differentiator, and one that people care about, and one that's hard to replicate, I think you're really onto something significant. It really helped our toy company grow to a degree it had not prior.
Yeah, I think really any business, whether it's a direct-to-consumer brand or even an agency like us, probably even more so for an agency where there's a lot of them. So you're in a very saturated market, and that differentiation is paramount to being able to have any success whatsoever. Otherwise, you're just going to be another sort of fish in the sea of thousands of others.
Totally. And you have your differentiation front and center, just like a good marketer would. Your focus on Gen Z is apparent, and you reaffirm that and build your business around that. And it is a differentiator for you and is meaningful. And you're building a brand around it and focusing on that. And it makes a lot of sense. So I can see, you doing the same thing.
And I think it's something that constantly evolves too. Like I'm always trying to think of, because I think differentiators sometimes pop up out of nowhere. Like we've been doing something a lot very well for maybe like 6 months now, and it's like, oh hey, we actually have something unique here, but we're not necessarily shouting it out to the rest of the world. And so like we just pushed our new homepage live either yesterday or the day before, and that was us trying to culminate like all the rapid growth that we had last year and all the new things that we implemented into something that's easily digestible for someone who's never heard of us before and is just landing on like the website for the first time. So I think that part is also kind of challenging if you have a differentiated product or offering, making it so that it is understood by somebody who isn't in the day to day with you. Because I see a lot of brands who like they have something really, really unique, but they can't get it across in like a sentence or two on a homepage hero, which is where you lose a lot of people.
Totally. I think what you're hitting on is the idea of simplicity. You know, an idea that's meaningful that you can describe in 1 or 2 sentences. I completely agree with you on that. And what happened for me is I really got inspired by internet, you know, based apps and, you know, websites and tech in like the mid 2000s. And I was going to school and learning about database modeling and picked up computer science courses and that sort of thing. And so I loved running the bubble company. And that was super fun. But that was when I was going to college and I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do professionally as well. And so I was super inspired by technology and especially like internet-based technology. And one little story, and I'll get back to the idea of simplicity here in a second, is that I was I was double majoring in finance and management information systems. So the MIS side was teaching us all about computer science and how to, you know, build and model databases and that sort of thing. So it was very much computer science-esque, where the finance was, you know, teaching us how to create beta profiles and risks and all these things to be like an investment banker and stuff. But something that like I really liked about the tech is like on the finance side, I didn't have like, I basically, you know, barely had $1 in my pocket at the time. So it's like on the finance side, like they would teach you how to make money with money, but I only had $1 at the time. So it's like, if they taught me how to make like, you know, 10%, I could make like a dime, you know what I mean? And it just, it sucked, you know? I'm like, this is not inspiring. We're like at all, because I don't have that base, you know, to invest from or whatever. And it just it wasn't very inspiring. It basically sucked, you know? So I'm like, oh man, I don't see a lot of opportunity over here given where I'm at. And on the tech side of things, you could, you know, literally create something from nothing. Like you could take ideas that you had, put yourself at a computer, you know, type the keyboard, write the code, deploy it to the internet, and then send your friend a link. And like they had an experience take place over there that was like, you know, legit, like meaningful. Like to me, that was like the coolest thing ever. So I'm like, I got to write code. I got to write software. Like I'm a software guy, you know, I love this stuff. And as in, you know, Facebook was growing, you still needed a .edu email address at the time, and a lot of other cool things. Wikipedia and just lots of these awesome products were being born in the mid 2000s, and I was super aware of them, and I wanted to build something like that, and I just loved it. You could create something from nothing. And to link back into the simplicity thing, and you know, I know we have an audience here listening to us, and I want to do everything I can to share information that could possibly be helpful. When I first started making apps, my app ideas were really complex. They had lots of moving parts and they were complicated, and they were just complicated, right? And so like, I'll spare you all the details, but I probably did 5, 6 like major like tech-based endeavors leading up to the conception and launch and building of Rebuy, which has us on this podcast together, of course. And so when in 2017 is you know, when we came up with the idea for Rebuy, and I co-founded this company with my brother James. And at that point in time, after having done lots of complex things, I literally wanted my next idea to be so simple it couldn't not work. Literally, it had to be so simple. It had to be so simple that it literally sounded ridiculous. That was the only type of business I wanted to work on at the time. I was just over the complex stuff. And we did that. Rebuy had that sort of principle to it at its inception. And I can describe, more on like what our original idea was and that sort of thing and why it was so simple. And I can do that. But you mentioned the idea of simplicity, and I just couldn't agree more. If you're going to build something new on day one, it needs to be simple. Don't view that as a weakness, view that as a strength.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a really solid, simple product in place, you can iterate thereafter and really start to take into account like customer feedback, how people are actually using the product, as opposed to spending a ton of money and time into developing something that may not even be like a very strong market fit.
Totally.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. But for Rebuy, where did everything sort of start? Like, what did 2017 look like? Because I was introduced to the tool probably like early 2020, maybe even later than that. So what did like V1 of Rebuy look like?
Yeah. So basically, James and I were at the second annual Shopify Unite conference, which was held in April 2017 in San Francisco. And they said, we were in the audience, and they said, okay, here's a big, feature announcement for our platform here at Shopify and they said, for the first time ever, developers are going to be able to create discount codes via the API. And I heard that, and with the mindset that I've described, an entrepreneurial mindset, looking for that, next, what's the next big idea that we can build, and wanting,
right,
knowing that it was so important to have a differentiated product like we talked about, I recognized that as an opportunity. And I thought to myself, okay, if we build something on top of this API that just got announced, in this moment, more or less, if we can build it quickly, by the very definition of that, we will have a differentiated product on day one, because this API didn't exist yesterday. It exists today. If we build on it today, our product will be, by its very definition, differentiated if we build first. And so, like, one of my earlier business ideas, I created this product. Again, I'll spare you all the details, but I competed against Salesforce and spreadsheets. And those are two competitors you don't want to go against, essentially, especially spreadsheets, as funny as it is. But seriously, you don't want a spreadsheet to be your competitor. You're probably going to lose. And so what I learned from that is that you want to build the next step in technology. You don't want to build something that already has a solution. It's day one for you as an entrepreneur when you're getting started. So leverage every tool that exists. I think about it like running up a set of stairs. It's like, you don't want to build a stair next to a stair that already exists. Why would you do that on day one? Just stand on that stair that somebody else built. There's like this idea in computer science that we all stand on the shoulders of giants. That's epic. Like, embrace that. Run to the top of the stairs until you fall off, essentially, and then build that next step. And so it's like, I knew that nobody had this, and that this would be a next step. And so I built it quickly. And the original idea, again, something so simple it could not work, is this idea that, okay, it was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to build an app that listens for an online store's orders. And 30 days after somebody places an order, we're simply going to ask them if they want to rebuy that product again. And to help incentivize that repeat purchase and get this differentiator in there, we're going to hit this new API at that moment in time. We're about to send that email. We're going to create a personalized discount code. We're going to embed it in that email. And we're going to help brands, turn one-time customers into repeat buyers by simply asking them 30 days later if they want to buy the product again. It's like sunglasses. Do you want to buy it again? Yeah, most of the time, no. But actually, a fair number of people say yeah, because I lost them. I sat on them. My dog ate them. They fell off the boat. Whatever it is. It can be a consumable product or one that's not. And asking people if they want to rebuy that product, and you're marketing a product that they've bought before back to them again, it works. It was almost like a silly idea, but it worked. And it made these brands money, and we did it. And they got our foot in the door.
I mean, I love how the name is so like so in line with the actual product. There's no confusion over what it does. This is a tool that will help your customers rebuy from you. That's awesome. I think I want to touch on your point about like building on top of the rest of the ecosystem, because I think
Mhm.
that is really the beauty and power of Shopify and the
Totally.
technology ecosystem that they built out, and why you've been able to be so successful over the last 4 or 5 years is because of the fact that you are a platform for growth and personalization that integrates with the rest of the ecosystem that merchants are using. And I mean, for us as an agency, we get so many efficiencies by utilizing a tool like yours, because we can plug it into Malomo, Attentive, Klaviyo, Recharge, all these other best-in-class providers that we're using in their particular disciplines. And I mean, it's invaluable. We literally cannot use certain tools because they don't work with the rest of the ecosystem. So how do you see Rebuy moving forward? And like, what's your strategy for winning this year into next?
Yeah, I mean, great question. And I agree with a lot of the points that you made. And one of my earlier startups that didn't work out was a .com product that just lived on the internet and nobody could find it. I couldn't get it started. It's sort of like a chicken and an egg thing. It's like nobody knew about it. How do we get people to it? And it like, the way I've described it in the past, it was like, it was almost like we were a speck of dust in outer space floating around. We existed. That speck of dust was cool. There was something cool, it was cool, but nobody knew about it. Nobody could find us. Nobody, like, we were just out there in outer space. And it didn't work out for us in the end, for that idea. Whereas Rebuy was like, basically, Rebuy was not my brother and I's first app that we created on Shopify either, by the way. It was not the first app we created on Shopify. And what we learned by creating apps on Shopify is that instead of being like this speck of dust just floating in outer space that nobody ever knew about, it felt like we landed on a planet, and there were like buyers and sellers. It was like, oh, we could set up shop. There's, other people walking around on this planet, and we can offer them something. They go, we could trade with each other. Like, that's literally what it felt like once we started making apps within the Shopify ecosystem. And that put a lot of wind in our sails, in terms of like, holy smokes, maybe we can actually make something really significant and make money and build a real business and that sort of thing. Where up to that point, it was, pretty demoralizing, frankly, not being able to get these things to start. So
Yeah.
this ecosystem that Shopify has created is awesome. It's created massive opportunity for tons of app developers, agencies, merchants, entrepreneurs, and we all know that. You were talking about that. So I just agree with you that I think, maybe there's going to be a handful of apps that are just like these things that just get created and they work. But I think most of the successful apps moving forward and software products are going to be based on some sort of platform or plug into some sort of platform. You really want to do your best to collaborate with the software products that are out there. Work with them as opposed to against them, or connect into them rather than trying to create your own ecosystem. And I think the ironic thing is, you can probably plug into an ecosystem like, Shopify, and then create a product so big, that being your first step, that, you can be an ecosystem yourself someday. But I think if you're earlier, or early on, you should want to be plugged in with ecosystems, and maybe someday you can build one of your own, but it's probably the right way to get started.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of almost look at Klaviyo now as an ecosystem, because it's just really a one hub where quite literally every app plugs into, and all the customer data lives within there. And so it is almost sort of a customer data ecosystem in that sense, because of all the integrations. Like if you build for Shopify and you build for Klaviyo, I feel like if you're an app on the Shopify store, those are your first two things that you have to do before you move on to anything else.
Totally. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Shopify, even Klaviyo, they're basically table stakes for direct to consumer brands. You've got to have a way to own your customer base and drive traffic to your store, and you've got to have a store to drive them to. And, we're talking about Klaviyo and Shopify at that point. So I couldn't agree with you more. You had asked, how do we plan to win, this year and beyond. And our strategy for winning really basically hits on exactly what we're talking about. Like, we're very conscious about the idea and executing on the fact that we are going to win and be the best personalization engine in e-commerce by being the most integrated personalization engine in e-commerce. So we have a big integration rolling out to power recommended products, dynamic and rule-based recommended products in Klaviyo emails. We have an integration in the works that we're going to release fairly soon, early this year still, with Attentive. We're one of Recharge's top tech partners. We have a bunch of powerful solutions for the online store that help brands sell more subscriptions, that help brands reactivate subscriptions. We have a big integration we're going to announce in Santa Monica at the start of May at Charge X. We're the platinum sponsor this year. I'm going to be one of the speakers there. We have a big new feature.
We're both going to be speaking there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, cheers to that, man.
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah, totally. So we have a big feature announcement, new product that we're building within the Recharge ecosystem. And, we've done an integration with Maloma, like you mentioned. And so, integrations are a big deal. They're good for the brands, they're good for the customer, and it's a winning strategy. So that's, our whole team is committed to that. And I think you can see that in our product, and you'll see more of it moving forward as well.
Yeah, and for us as an agency, it makes our lives so much easier, because how we've sort of positioned ourselves for this year is as a retention and customer experience agency first and foremost. And so everything we do is about increasing lifetime value. And in order to create a cohesive customer experience, our tools need to talk to one another. If they're siloed, it just doesn't work. And so I'm super excited to get in on those betas and start pushing things forward on the Rebuy front. That's going to be really exciting for our merchants to get to play with and to get to experience the results that'll be able to generate.
Cool. And yeah, and I think it makes sense for the brand and the agency, like you're talking about, to have a single source of truth in terms of how you want to merchandise your products together. And if somebody's looking at product A, what products do you want to suggest that they also take a look at? You can power that through our product. If you want to do that in an email, if you want to do it on the product page, if you want to do recommendations based on what products they have in their shopping cart, if you want to, control your recommendation algorithm, whether it's, purely AI based, or you have rules that you want to use to merchandise certain products with each other, even in your TapCart mobile app. That's another integration we have in the works this year. I was going to say another one that we have that I'm going to announce at ChargeX actually. But basically it makes a ton of sense for a brand to have one personalization product like Rebuy, and then use the power of our product at every single customer touch point. And I think, you're talking, we're talking about that right now, you and me both. So it's a big deal. It makes a lot of sense for the brand and allows them to create the very best experience for the customer as well.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you so much for joining us. You'll have to come back when some of these new features and functionality and integrations get rolled out, and we can maybe dive into the product a little bit more specifically. But thanks for joining us. I really enjoyed it. Could you let everybody who's listening know where they could find you online, and also how they could get Rebuy up and running on their Shopify store?
Yeah, totally. You can find us online. Just Google Rebuy. You'll find us right away. Our website is rebuyengine.com. We are built on Shopify. We're one of the leading, if not the leading, personalization engine in the world of Shopify. You can find us on the Shopify App Store. Just go to the App Store, search for Rebuy. It's spelled just like you'd think, 5-letter word. And we have a lot to offer. We talked about the origin story of our product. And one thing that I didn't mention during that is the next step that we took. And that is, our customers said, hey, in addition to this product that you're recommending to the user that they buy again, can you make smart product recommendations for them based on what they bought? And that was a huge turning point. And that's how we ended up becoming an API first personalization engine more so than what we started with. So we listened to our customers, we built what they asked for, and we built it in a way that helped us scale into the company that we are today.
And I think the best part is how simple it is for somebody to use who doesn't have necessarily a technical background. Like myself, I can create custom logic and rule-based logic around what I want to show a customer, and it's just a couple clicks of the button. I don't have to fire up the T1 connection and learn how to code. So I'm I'm happy about that.
Right on, man.
Well, awesome. Thank you for joining us. As always, this is Brandon Amoroso. You can find me at brandonamoroso.com or at electricmarketing.com. We'll see you next time.